When you invest in high-end hardware, you should come to expect high-end results. Right, but the future of PC gaming is AI. Temporal upscaling, frame interpolation, and image manipulation. The future of how good games look and run may depend on how hard the algorithms work and, well, not the developers. And it starts with AMD's open source FidelityFX Super Resolution, which is currently on version 3.0, and NVIDIA's Deep Learning Super Sampling, or DLSS, which is currently on version 3.5. Now, one of the biggest changes or implementations AMD is bringing over with FSR3 is its frame generation tech. And what this does is it allows the system to create entirely new in-game frames and present them to the user, which then ultimately enhances the FPS, or the frames per second, in the games that support them. And now AMD has introduced two essential new implementations with FSR3, one being the new frame interpolation tech and a new higher quality native AA, or anti-aliasing, quality mode that is meant to sharpen and improve image quality, similar to NVIDIA's DLAA, or deep learning anti-aliasing tech. And now frame interpolation works similar to NVIDIA's frame generation, where it takes two frames and renders an additional frame in between them. The optical flow technology compares the previous frame with the next frame to produce a higher quality image using the data collected from all three frames. Now, over on the AMD side, this is all happening asynchronously, meaning it's happening all at the same time. This also means that it won't interfere with your game's rendering pipeline, so it does have the potential benefit to introduce new frames. And then over on NVIDIA, which too also introduced some new tech with DLSS 3.5, but DLSS 3.5 too uses frame generation, which works as the same on paper, but it's actually hardware accelerated with also its tensor cores and only supported on RTX 40 series cards. That's frame generation. A lot of confusion here. You can run, say, DLSS 3.5 or DLSS 3.0 on 20 and 30 series graphics cards, but to use frame generation, at least to date, is only going to be available and accessible to RTX 40 series card owners. So it may now be the time to upgrade, or it may not. We're going to talk about that a little longer on down this video. But not only is NVIDIA introducing frame generation in DLSS 3.5, we're also getting a new super resolution feature and ray reconstruction, which is a new feature. It improves ray tracing image quality by replacing the previously hand optimizing denoiser with an AI network trained by supercomputers. This is one of the biggest difference between the tech that NVIDIA uses and the tech that AMD uses. NVIDIA uses neural rendering networks to actually upscale and enhance the images, where AMD is using simply software to do the trick, or to do the job, because it essentially is a trick. Which is a perfect segue over into some of the concerns I have with the direction that AMD and both NVIDIA and eventually Intel as well will come to follow suit. But with looking at the two biggest players here in the game, NVIDIA and AMD, and looking at the direction that the two largest GPU manufacturers in the world are currently heading down, and they are currently both trying to push versions of DLSS and essentially FSR3, that is using AI to enhance the way we experience our games. I am essentially a fan of general nativity, that's running your games at their base or native resolution, whether that's 1920 by 1080p or 2560 by 1440p, a popular favorite resolution of mine, and one I recommend to gamers who are looking to, say, take their level or take their experience as a PC gamer to the next level, and you've been playing on 1080p your whole entire life, and you're looking to get a little bit more detail out of your games. It's a fresh way to even introduce a newer way to experience some older games. But I'm a general fan of running your games at their native resolution and not relying on neural networks or AI software to enhance said image. You also have to wait for games to actually support FSR3 and DLSS 3.5. FSR3 is available and currently supports two games, Forspoken and Immortals of Avium, which Forspoken has a GPU requirement at either an RX 5500 or a GTX 1060. Interestingly enough, if it's an AMD partnered game, an early adopter of FSR3, but it can run on a 60GB graphics card like a 1060, why require 8GB of VRAM on your own GPU? Does that tell us that the days of Polaris are also long gone? We may just have to take a look at that in a future video. And while other FSR3 technology are available on older graphics cards all the way over to the 10 series lineup, that's Pascal over on NVIDIA, and its older Polaris graphics cards over on AMD, but you won't see the performance yields you would come to expect unless you migrate over to purchasing some of those newer cards. FSR3 and DLSS are both intended to be features meant to enhance the gaming experience, especially on systems with limited GPU power. But to utilize both frame generation and anti-aliasing with FSR3 will require you to have an RX 5000 series graphics card, so about a 5700 XT, which looking over at Forspoken, which has a GPU requirement of an RX 5500, it would make sense, being that that's a game that they have constantly pushed and demonstrated using FSR3. And there goes the same for NVIDIA's lineup of RTX graphics cards. If you want to use ray tracing or any form of DLSS, that will require you to have at least an RTX 20 series graphics cards, which you could pick up a 2060, 2070, somewhere along the lines there, between $150 to $200. So that's a good starting point, especially if these are technologies you believe as a gamer can enhance your experience. Go for it. That's one thing we're all about here on this channel. DLSS 3.5/frame generation only available on RTX 40 series graphics cards, and FSR3 or fluid motion frames are only available on RDNA 2 graphics card series and up, 5000 series graphics cards like the 5700 XT and what have you, the 5800 XT, and 20, 30, 40 series cards over on the NVIDIA sides. Say, should you want to take advantage of AMD's software on an NVIDIA graphics card versus say using NVIDIA's hardware. But older graphics cards, or legacy hardware is what we like to call it here on this channel, those components being pushed away in favor of newer cards isn't only one of my main concerns here. I mean, what about general nativity? Native mode for the best image control. Sharp, detailed, rich textures on your environment, character models, and what have you, all without the AI noise and latency. I mean, don't even get me started on the latency. The latency issue is more prevalent over on AMD's FSR side, but using NVIDIA's Reflex, you can lower latency just a bit, but that's something we're going to test more here in future videos. It is a little difficult to test and measure latency, say in video, but latency is essentially the time it takes for input to be registered from, say, your keyboard and mouse or from you into the game. And now also there are some other factors to take into consideration as well, like YouTube compressing videos and it being slightly difficult to really measure and tell what the quality of the image that's being produced when using both NVIDIA's and AMD's, software or features to enhance the frames or to enhance image quality. Those two things can almost be purely subjective, if you will, being that an image that may look grainy or not as detailed to me may suffice to you. And this could also very much depend on the game. How detailed is the game? What type of game is it? Does the gameplay experience benefit from more frames? Or does the gameplay experience benefit from better visual quality and detail in the environments? Does that enhance the experience? Is it a fast-moving game or is it a slow-burning game? What may look good to me may not look good to you, and vice versa. But if there's any benefit to be had, then that is something we should take into consideration and look at, especially possibly looking into the idea that older graphics cards like an RTX 2070 or an RTX 2060 or 80, somewhere along the lines of that series generation, could possibly benefit from these features so long as the game has it implemented. That's a big must and a big if. It's just a question mark that boils down to the developers and a strong indicator of its general value and worth should we see more developers pushing to implement it into the games, because they know their games better than anybody, better than NVIDIA, better than AMD, and better than us who have played them. So how will both shape the future of PC gaming? NVIDIA's DLSS and AMD's FSR. FSR uses a combination of bilinear upscaling and machine learning to improve image quality. It reconstructs details and textures in a lower resolution image to scale them to a higher resolution. DLSS is mainly based on machine learning and artificial intelligence. It uses neural networks to convert low resolution images to higher resolution images, reconstruction, details, and textures. And this points me back to my argument or my concern being that we may seem to lose, or it won't be as popular. General nativity, just running your games at their base resolution, may not be the best possible option going forward. But the bigger question here is, will both of these AI upscaling technologies push newer cards or drive interest in legacy hardware? That depends on you, the gamer, the type of games you play, and, well, how you wish to experience them. With both FSR and DLSS being a case-by-case scenario in both game and player. That's all I got for this one. Do be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't yet. I do hope to catch you all in the next one. So until then, be easy.